you were trekking across difficult, unfamiliar terrain, it would help to have a guide. Someone who's been there before, someone who can keep you on track and steer you around major obstacles and show you where to step in the most treacherous spots. And the same thing can happen in the life of the church. That's another benefit of fellowship, is that we can learn from the personal example of those who are on the same spiritual journey with us. And so that takes us back to this prophecy that Agabus delivers about Paul's imprisonment. I think it serves to highlight Paul's example for the church. I think that's the point here. We pick up the story again, Acts 21, 12 through 14. Luke tells us, because Luke is actually part of the party at this point. When we heard this, we and the people there urged him not to go up to Jerusalem. Then Paul answered, "What are you doing, weeping and breaking my heart? For I'm ready not only to be imprisoned, but even to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus." And then verse 14 says, "Since he would not be persuaded, we ceased and said, 'Let the will of the Lord be done.'" So Paul's companions and the believers there in Caesarea, they respond in an understandable way to this prophecy. They don't want Paul to suffer. And again, we go back to that idea of family. Their concern for him is an encouraging thing on one level, but it also makes it harder for him to follow through on what the Lord is calling him to do. And so he testifies here of his willingness to suffer. I suspect that it has a huge impact on those believers. They say, "Let the will of the Lord be done." Now that may sound like they're just giving up, but I think that's a significant statement. Accepting and doing the Lord's will is really at the core of what it means to follow Jesus. I think we hear it in his prayer on the night before he's crucified. Luke 22, 41 through 42 tells us he withdrew from them about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, saying, "Father, if you're willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." Jesus is the ultimate guide. As he suffered and died to purchase our salvation, he also, at the same time, set the example for how we should live the life of faith. Humbly submitting to God, even in times of hardship, times of suffering. 1 Peter 2:21, Peter calls us to follow in his steps. And so as we seek to do that, it helps to also have the example of other believers who are doing that. And that's what we see with Paul here. He's committed to doing the will of the Lord. And so we see even in his letters in 1 Corinthians 11:1, he says, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ." Now you might think, well, of course he can say that. He's an apostle. But in 1 Peter 5:3, Peter says that local church elders should be examples of the flock. That's the core of biblical leadership. In 1 Thessalonians 1:7, Paul commends the whole church in Thessalonica for being an example to believers throughout Macedonia and Achaia. And so this is something we should all strive for. We can all be examples. And you see the power of that here with Paul. The example of one faithful person can inspire others to accept and do the Lord's will. But that only happens when we're all engaged in the fellowship. We must interact in ways that allow others to that allow us to learn from the example of others and allow them to learn from our example. That kind of fellowship is powerful. And there's another benefit that magnifies it.